Hey everyone, Mr. Say here. This is a guide for Nations Cup Round 4 of the 2020 FIA season taking place at Sardegna A with the X2019 competition. So let's get this started by mentioning the brake balance. So out of the brake balance at -1 for time trial and qualifying, an Indy race, I have the brake balance at -4 to save those rear tires. And another note is that when you're coming out of corners, you want to straighten up the car before you start to fully accelerate. That way you reduce the risk of spinning out. And you'll see what I mean once we go through this first corner. So for this first braking point, you're braking just as you pass the 100-meter board. Brake as much as you can in a straight line. Slowly ease off of the brakes as you turn in when the blue area ends. And then once you hit the apex, you want to slowly get on the throttle. And once the car is pointing where you want to go, straighten up the steering and then fully accelerate. Then for this next turn, you're braking just before the grass on the right turns into gravel. Quick burst of braking, but bring yourself towards the left side of the track as there's a right turn coming up immediately after. I use this yellow sign on the left as my braking point, and you just want to use a little bit of braking. You can go down to first gear for extra rotation. Straighten up the car as soon as you can before you get on the throttle, because over here I got on the throttle a little too early and I almost spun out. Then your next braking point, the second to last PlayStation sign on the right, so this is just after the 50-meter board. Go for somewhat of a light apex and you want to start to fully accelerate just after you pass this opening of the trees. So straighten up the car and fully accelerate. Then from here on out, you're pretty much just revving at the car and you want to bring yourself towards the right side of the track. Brake just before you reach the 100-meter board. So you're braking right around here. Brake as much as you can in a straight line. And just like the first turn, slowly feather in the throttle. Get the car pointing where you want to go and start to fully accelerate once the steering is straightened up. Then for this chicane, in time trial and qualifying, you can take this turn flat out, turn in with the curb on the right ends. In the race, you want to do a little lift as you make the left turn. And finally, brake just as you're about to pass the 100-meter board. Just like the first turn and the hairpin we went through, feather in the throttle as you make your way through the turn. And once you get the steering straightened up, that is when you start to fully accelerate. And this final turn can be taken flat out, and that is pretty much it for the lap, guys. So we'll finish up this lap and then take a look at the strategies. Alright, so the strategy part of the guide is starting up, and you have 5 minutes to try to get a good qualifying time, which means that you'll have 2 to 3 chances to try to get a good qualifying time. Because the X2019 competitions are high downforce cars, it can be pretty tempting to take advantage of the slipstream as you go down the long main straight and the shorter back straight, but you do have to deal with the dirty air if you are within 3/4 of a second behind someone. And because the dirty air is, I'm going to say, brutal with these kind of cars, I would highly suggest just trying to qualify alone, qualify far away from everyone, especially for those in the lower splits. That way you have less of a chance of getting interrupted by someone getting in your way. And this qualifying session is pretty much all about trying to push the car and your driving skills to the limit to try to get the best qualifying time possible, unless if you're like me and somehow get the same time back to back. But once you do a qualifying lap, or if you end up messing up along the way, you can start over by pressing options on your controller, exit, and in the lobbies you can press enter course, or during the FIA race itself, it'll be called qualifying. You'll be able to spawn back at the pit stops with a new set of tires, and you can pretty much just go ahead, do your out lap, and then start another qualifying lap. But just be aware that if you do the jump out and jump back in strategy, which is what this pretty much is, you want to make sure that you have enough time to be able to complete an out lap before the first timer hits 0. And last but not least, make sure you warm up the tires. So as you do your out lap, just swerve the car around, because even one out lap through Sardegna A is not really enough to warm up the front tires of this demon spawn. So as you do your outlap, just swerve the car around, get those front tires warmed up. And I think so this was a later run, just messing around with our friend Turismo Lester. And yeah, you're just trying to push the car as much as you can, get the tires warmed up in your outlap, and then just push the car to the limits. And our qualifying times were done alone, so we had no slipstream helping us out. And at the end of the day, you'll have 2 to 3 chances to try to get the best qualifying time possible. But anyways, move on over to the race strategies. This is a good start, so bring the traction control to 1, and a while after the race starts, you can then move down the traction control to 0 or move it up to whatever value you normally have it set to. And I say keep the traction control on for a while because this car generates a lot of wheel spin, especially on the cold tires, so you want to be a little careful with how you start with this car because it's really easy to spin out very early on in the race. And speaking of cold tires, that is going to be a thing for around 1 to 2 laps. The tires will be pretty cold, so you're not going to be having all the grip that the tires will provide for around 1 to 2 laps. So just drive a little more carefully throughout the start of the race. So fuel is a ×2, and fuel is actually an issue because this car is somehow bad when it comes to fuel. So you will have to do a bit of fuel saving if possible, and you will have to refuel. In terms of tire wear is a ×7, so tire wear is obviously an issue. You have both the racing soft and medium tires provided, and both tires are required, so you do need to use both the racing soft and medium tires so you don't get a 1-minute penalty after the race ends. And obviously, if you're starting towards the very front, start on the racing soft tires. If you're starting towards the middle or the back of the pack, start on the racing medium tires. In terms of how long the tires last and what kind of pit strategy you want to go with, the racing soft tires last anywhere from 8 to 10 laps. A lot of it's going to depend on how much your rear tires are wearing out, because for the X2019 competition, the rear tires wear out a lot faster than the front tires, so you want the brake balance at -4, or that's the value I have it at, but generally speaking, you want the brake balance towards the front of the car to try to save those rear tires. And in the strategies that I'll be testing, I was doing 10 laps on the racing soft tires, so I'm pretty much going for 10 laps on the racing soft tires and 10 laps on the racing medium tires. So generally speaking, you're going to be pitting around halfway into the race. And as you see right now, I'm trying out the one stop where you don't do any sort of fuel savings. So the strategies I'll try for this race are a one stop where you don't do any sort of fuel saving, a one stop where you do a lot of fuel saving, and then I'll be trying out a 2-stop. And for the one-stop races that I'll be testing out, I'll be doing 10 laps on the racing soft tires and 10 laps on the racing medium tires. And as you see on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, we have pretty worn out tires, and the rear tires are the ones that wear out faster. So you want to be having the brake balance towards the front of the car to try to save those rear tires. And as the tires wear out, you just want to be a little more careful with how you drive the car, especially out of corners, to try to avoid spinning out. And another thing before I forget, watch out for the dirty air. So whenever you're within 3/4 of a second behind someone, you're engaging with the dirty air, so it'll make your car understeer even more on the twistier parts of the track. So you want to be a little more careful with your driving under someone's dirty air. But on the main and the back straights, it'll help your car go even faster, so you can take advantage of that to set yourself up to pass them or to short shift under the slipstream to save a bit more fuel. But anyways, end of lap 10, we're going on over to the pit stops, and we're going to go on over for a tire change and to refuel. So we're switching over to the racing medium tires, and we have to refuel quite a bit because we didn't do any sort of fuel saving. So we're going to refuel up to the diamond that I am about to stop the refueling at. So there we go. We refueled around 42% of fuel. And that specific pit stop, we ended up losing around 27 seconds. So that is quite a bit of a pit loss that we have to deal with for a tire change and for refueling. And again, this is with zero fuel saving, and we're just going to keep on going flat out throughout our racing medium stint. And in a moment, we're going to skip on over towards the end, towards the end of the race. And the racing medium tires have a noticeable amount of tire wear, especially towards the rear tires. The worn racing medium tires are a bit sketchier than the worn racing soft tires, so you want to be even more careful once the racing medium tires start to wear out, because as you saw right now, the car started to jerk around a little bit. So yeah, it gets pretty sketchy. You want to be as careful as possible. And luckily, we're not using the racing hard tires because the X2019 on racing hard tires is nearly undrivable. And as we're waiting to cross the finish line, I want to note that earlier I mentioned that slipstream can be used for fuel saving by short shifting. That's pretty much going to be the only time you're going to want to be short shifting. You want to only short shift when you're under someone's slipstream and you're getting yourself pulled closer to the car in front of you. So if you're within 3/4 of a second behind someone, you can engage in the short shifting, because short shifting alone, so without any sort of slipstream, is going to hurt the car's pace, because this car is terrible when it comes to fuel efficiency and fuel saving. But anyways, at the end of this race, we finished with a 29 minutes and 5 seconds. In reality, it's a 29 minutes and 3 seconds because I made a couple of mistakes. So 29 minutes and 3 seconds is going to be the bar that is going to be set. So let's move on over towards the one stop again, except this time we're going to be fuel saving. So in order to make this whole race without having to refuel, we need to be using 5% of fuel each lap, which means that you're pretty much going to be shifting the car at around 25% of the bar being full. And as you're going to see on the right side of the screen, this car is really bad when it comes to fuel saving, because this car loses all of its pace when you short shift to try to save fuel. So in my first run, where I was not fuel saving at all, revving out the car, I was doing 125s. In this run, I'm doing 126s. That is 1 second per lap slower fuel saving versus not fuel saving. And yeah, we don't have to refuel. Yes, we are going to save a bit of time from the pit stops because we don't have to refuel, but is it really worth fuel saving so much to the point where we're losing so much time? No, it's not going to be worth it. So as I said earlier, the one stop without fuel saving, so going all out, got me a 29 minutes and 3 seconds. Fuel saving to the point where I don't have to refuel is much slower. I ended up getting a 29 minutes and 12 seconds. So fuel saving, only do it whenever you're within someone's slipstream, and I don't know why I included that. But yeah, be careful with the traction control starting out the race. But anyways, so the only time you want to fuel save is whenever you're within someone's slipstream. Keep that in mind. But anyways, the last strategy that I'll be testing out is a 2-stop. So for this specific race, I'm doing 9 laps on the racing soft tires, 1 lap on the racing medium tires to fulfill the final tire requirement, and then I'm doing 10 laps on the racing soft tires. So let's go ahead and skip on over towards the first pit stop. So at the end of lap 9, I'm going to pit on over and switch tires, but I'm not going to refuel just yet because I'm only doing 1 lap on the racing medium tires. So I'll be doing the refueling at the next pit stop. So let's go ahead and change tires, and if I remember correctly, just a tire change will make you lose around 21 to 22 seconds. So let's go ahead and switch on over towards the next pit stop. So at the end of lap 10, we're going to switch on over from the racing medium to the racing soft tires, and this time we're going to refuel. So let's go ahead and eventually show up to the pit stops. There we go. We have to change tires again. and then we're going to refuel, and we're going to wait around until the fuel reaches the diamond, in which by refueling I think we lose around 5 to 6 seconds this time around. And we're going to go ahead and eventually skip on over towards the end of the race, where I get to say that the 2-stop is not viable at all. This is a 1-stop race. And yes, you're under racing soft tires for a much longer time into 2-stop, but the long pit stops and the extra pit stop that you have to do is going to kill all of that momentum. And the other thing is that the lap time differences between the racing soft and medium tires is not that big. I think the lap time differences is around 0.2 to 0.8 of a second per lap. So that's pretty small, and you're not going to make that up by 2-stopping. So 2-stop is out of the question. This is a 1-stop race. And the 2-stop was actually slower than fuel saving all day long, as I ended up getting a 29 minutes and 16 seconds, 15 because I made an error, so my actual total time was a 29 minutes and 15 seconds. So in reality, you're better off doing a 1-stop where you pit somewhere halfway into the race to switch on over to the tires you haven't used yet, and you're better off going all out. But once again, only do some fuel saving if you're within the 3/4 of a second range between yourself and the next car, as you'll be getting a tow from that car in front of you due to the strong slipstream. But anyways, places to overtake and the penalty serving zone. The main straight and the back straight are pretty much your best places to get the overtake done because of the slipstream. So if you're within 3/4 of a second behind someone, once again, you're going to be getting a tow. Your car is going to carry a lot more speed, which means that it'll set you up for some potential overtakes. After that, it's pretty much single file line because of the dirty air that these cars generate. So it'll be extremely difficult to try to get any sort of passing done in the areas that are pretty much not the main straight or the back straight. And here is the back straight. This is the last best place to try to get the overtake done, but unlike the main straight, this part is a little narrower, so just be a little careful when you have to go side to side with someone and then get ready to brake for the hairpin. And then after that, single file line once again. Get ready to deal with the chicane over here. If you're behind someone, get ready to lift the throttle a little bit to compensate for the dirty air. And here we go through the final hairpin onto the main straight. And the only penalty serving zone is hanging out just before the pit stop entry area. So I think it's actually possible to serve the penalty as you're entering the pit stops and basically come out of the pit stops without really having to serve the penalty anymore. Although this is a theoretical thing, I haven't seen it actually happen, but let me know if that actually does happen and someone gets away with it. But anyways, that is pretty much it for the guide. Once again, 1-stop race, pit around halfway into the race to switch on over to the tires that you haven't used yet. Be careful with this car because this car is a little demon spawn and it'll try to spin you out if you're very careless with it. But that's all from me. If this guide helps, you can press the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I do have a membership program thing, which you can check out in the description down below. But that's all from me. This is Mr. MCA getting spun out by this little demon spawn, and I'll see you in the next video.